Sophie Lang thought her affair with Sheikh Omar Al Rashid would change her life, and it did, but only in the most horrifying way possible. A week after their secret meeting in California, half of Omar's body surfaced in a river, sparking an international mystery that exposed a web of lust, betrayal, and deadly ambition stretching from Dubai to the heart of America. In October 2022, Sheikh Omar Al Rashid, a 47-year-old billionaire businessman from Dubai, boarded his private jet bound for California. The journey was supposed to be routine, just another trip on his packed calendar, but in reality, it was built on secrets. Omar had told his family he was attending a private investment conference in Los Angeles, yet his true destination was a quiet resort town near Sacramento. There, waiting for him, was Sophie Lang, a 31-year-old luxury property agent who had once helped him purchase a villa in Beverly Hills. Their connection had begun with business and quickly evolved into something forbidden. Omar's reputation in Dubai was one of elegance, discipline, and respectability. He was a father of three and husband to one of Dubai's most admired social figures. But behind closed doors, he lived a double life. His trips to California had become frequent over the past year, always disguised as corporate ventures. Sophie, drawn to his wealth and attention, had been living in the shadow of his promises, a new house, a steady allowance, and a future together. But as months passed, she began to see how temporary it all was. The relationship had grown heavy with tension and mistrust. Before leaving Dubai, Omar transferred a large amount of money into an account linked to Sophie. Some of his business associates later claimed he had confided fears that someone was following him. Still, he refused to cancel the trip. When his jet touched down, he looked calm and determined. He believed he could fix everything: the affair, the arguments, the money, all in one final meeting. As he checked into the lakeside resort under a false name, he had no idea he was walking straight into the most dangerous week of his life. Sheikh Omar Al Rashid arrived at the lakeside resort under the name Mr. Kareem, using his assistant's email to make the reservation. The resort, hidden between tall pines and calm blue water, was known for its privacy, a place where celebrities and wealthy guests could disappear from public eyes. Omar requested the entire top floor of the main villa, ensuring no one else could stay nearby. He ordered no personal staff, no guards, no chauffeur. Everything about this trip was designed to stay invisible. He checked in on a Sunday afternoon, dressed casually in jeans and a cap, a rare sight for a man used to tailored suits. 2 days later, hotel staff saw him dining with a woman matching Sophie Lang's description. She appeared anxious, avoiding eye contact and constantly looking at her phone. Witnesses recalled that their conversation looked intense. After dinner, they left together and returned to the resort's private suite. Security cameras later recorded Omar walking out again close to midnight, wearing a light jacket and carrying his phone. That was the last confirmed sighting of him alive. By morning, the resort manager grew suspicious when Omar didn't respond to housekeeping or meal service. His car remained parked outside. When his driver came to collect him, the sheik was gone. His phone was switched off, his passport left behind in the safe, and there was no sign of forced entry. Local police were notified within hours, but they initially treated it as a disappearance. They didn't realize who Mr. Kareem really was until his passport details surfaced. By then, Omar had vanished completely, leaving behind only faint traces, a half-finished bottle of wine, a single broken glass, and an air of silence that felt heavier than any storm. A week after Sheikh Omar's mysterious disappearance, a pair of early morning joggers stumbled upon a horrifying sight along the banks of the Sacramento River. Something pale and motionless was tangled in the reeds near the water's edge. At first, they thought it was debris, but as they got closer, they saw the unmistakable outline of a human body. It was wrapped tightly in a luxury hotel bedsheet marked with a golden monogram from the same resort where Omar had been staying. When police arrived, they realized it was only half a body, the torso and arms, cleanly severed at the waist. The discovery sent shockwaves through local authorities. Investigators sealed off the area, while forensic teams began working against the rising sun. The remains were in an advanced state of decay, suggesting the body had been in the water for several days. Inside the sheet, detectives found a fragment of jewelry, a small gold cufflink engraved with Arabic initials. It didn't take long to confirm the identity. The fingerprints matched those of Sheikh Omar Al Rashid, the missing guest registered as Mr. Kareem. News of the grisly discovery spread quickly, reaching Dubai within hours. International media swarmed the scene, describing it as one of the most shocking cases involving a foreign dignitary in U.S. history. Detectives launched a large-scale investigation, searching the river for the rest of the Sheikh's remains. The clean cut of the body suggested something more than rage. It hinted at precision. Someone had wanted Omar not just dead, but destroyed. And as pieces of evidence began to surface, it became clear that this was no random killing. Someone had planned every detail long before his final night by the lake. Investigators quickly turned their attention to Sophie Lang, the last known person to see Sheikh Omar alive. Her name had appeared several times in his phone records and in the resort's guest log. When detectives arrived at her Los Angeles apartment, Sophie appeared calm but visibly exhausted. She told them she had met Omar for dinner and that he left her home around midnight. She claimed they argued about ending their relationship but insisted she had no idea what happened afterward. Her story seemed rehearsed, too smooth for someone whose lover had just vanished. A forensic team later entered her apartment with a search warrant, and that's when small details began to unravel her version of events. In the bathroom, investigators found faint traces of blood on the sink and under the tiles near the drain. Someone had tried to clean it, but a few stains remained. Lab results confirmed the blood belonged to Sheikh Omar. When confronted, Sophie said she had cut her hand days earlier, yet the pattern and volume of blood contradicted her explanation. Further searching revealed another alarming clue: a luxury watch wrapped inside a towel and hidden in her laundry basket. It was a platinum Rolex, engraved with Omar's initials, the same model seen on him in recent photographs. Investigators also discovered fragments of a torn bedsheet similar to the one found with his body. Sophie began to change her story, saying Omar had returned to her apartment briefly before leaving again. But her words no longer convinced anyone. Detectives noted her nervous demeanor, her constant shifting between fear and frustration. What had started as a missing person inquiry was quickly turning into a murder investigation, and Sophie Lang was now the prime suspect. Detectives began piecing together Omar's final hours using surveillance footage from around Sophie's apartment complex. The building had 3 cameras, one at the entrance, another facing the parking lot, and a third in the hallway near her door. Around midnight, a black SUV appeared on the footage, pulling up beside the curb. The driver was later identified as Ethan Cole, Sophie's ex-boyfriend. A tall, heavily built man in his early 30s, Ethan worked as a nightclub bouncer and had a reputation for violent temper outbursts. Police records showed multiple arrests for assault and harassment. The footage showed Ethan waiting inside the SUV for several minutes before getting out and entering the building. Just minutes later, a flicker of light appeared through Sophie's apartment window, followed by shadows moving quickly inside. About an hour later, Ethan reappeared carrying a large duffel bag that seemed unusually heavy. He looked around cautiously before loading it into the SUV and driving away. Sophie was never seen leaving the building that night. When police questioned her about Ethan, she denied any contact with him for months, but phone records proved otherwise. In the days leading up to Omar's disappearance, Sophie and Ethan had exchanged over 40 messages, many deleted shortly after being sent. The contents of recovered texts suggested jealousy, money problems, and veiled threats. Investigators began to suspect that Ethan might have discovered Sophie's relationship with Omar and decided to take revenge. Yet as more evidence surfaced, detectives sensed there was something else beneath the surface, a motive that went far beyond jealousy. The calculated timing, the hidden money transfers, and the precision of the crime hinted that Ethan's appearance that night might not have been spontaneous at all. The investigation took a sharp turn when financial records exposed an unexpected money trail. 3 days before his death, Sheikh Omar had transferred $250,000 to an American account registered under Sophie Lang's name. The payment was marked as consulting fees, but investigators quickly learned it had nothing to do with business. Emails retrieved from Omar's private phone revealed messages between him and Sophie filled with emotional tension. He promised her a new apartment and financial security if she would stay quiet about their affair. Sophie, struggling with mounting debts and lawsuits from her failed real estate firm, had grown desperate. The payment seemed like hush money, a final attempt to buy peace. As detectives examined Sophie's finances, they found she had withdrawn nearly $30,000 in cash right before Omar arrived in California. Around the same time, Ethan Cole suddenly paid off his overdue car loan and purchased new electronics. Investigators began to suspect that Sophie might have offered Ethan a share of the money, pulling him into something far darker than either of them expected. Friends of Sophie later told police she had been under extreme stress, convinced that Omar was going to cut her off. She feared that when he returned to Dubai, she would be left with nothing. Detectives theorized that she might have planned to blackmail him, using private photos and messages. But something had gone wrong during their meeting. Whether out of panic, rage, or betrayal, events escalated beyond control. The money that was supposed to keep things quiet had instead lit the spark that destroyed them all. What began as a secret financial arrangement was now looking like the foundation of a cold, calculated conspiracy. As investigators searched for answers, they focused on finding the rest of Sheikh Omar's remains. Teams of divers spent weeks combing through the Sacramento River, using sonar and underwater drones to scan the muddy depths. 2 weeks after the first discovery, a fisherman spotted something unusual caught against a cluster of rocks several miles downstream. When authorities arrived, they recovered the lower half of a human body wrapped in heavy plastic and weighed down with concrete blocks. The medical examiner confirmed what everyone feared. It belonged to Sheikh Omar Al Rashid. What disturbed investigators most were the nature of the injuries. The cuts were clean, straight, and executed with surgical precision. It was not the work of an untrained killer or a crime of passion. Whoever had dismembered the body knew anatomy well, suggesting experience in medical or technical fields. This revelation shifted the investigation dramatically. Police began to suspect that the crime involved more than just Sophie and her volatile ex-boyfriend. Detectives reviewed Ethan Cole's background but found no medical experience. His past was rough but simple: bar fights, nightclubs, and short-term jobs. Sophie, on the other hand, had previously dated a man named Dr. Leonard Gray, a plastic surgeon who once lost his license for operating under the influence. Investigators started to wonder if he could have played a role in the disposal process, possibly hired for his skills. However, there was no direct link, only suspicion. The discovery of the lower half confirmed one thing: this was no spontaneous act of violence. It was organized, deliberate, and meant to hide the truth. Someone with both knowledge and money had orchestrated it, and the deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became that the real motive was still hidden far beneath the surface. As the investigation widened, detectives began to uncover Sheikh Omar's complicated business history in Dubai. He wasn't just a real estate magnate. He was a powerful investor with international holdings, and not all of his deals had ended peacefully. Among his former partners was Faisal Nasser, a longtime associate who had once co-owned several development projects with Omar. Months before his death, a multi-million-dollar land dispute between the two had turned hostile. Faisal accused Omar of stealing investors and sabotaging his contracts. In Dubai's business circles, their feud was well known, and it had left deep bitterness on both sides. When investigators obtained access to Omar's encrypted emails, they found multiple threatening messages traced back to servers in the United Arab Emirates. Some were anonymous. Others came from shell accounts later linked to companies owned by Faisal. The threats warned Omar to stay away from California and accused him of forgetting who built him. What seemed like an affair gone wrong was beginning to look like something much larger: a murder with international motives. Financial records added more suspicion. A U.S. account connected to Sophie had received 2 separate wire transfers from an offshore company registered in Dubai under the name Nasser Holdings. Both payments were made within days of Omar's arrival in California. Investigators began to believe Sophie had been manipulated or even paid to lure Omar into a vulnerable situation. Ethan, with his violent temper and financial desperation, could have been the perfect pawn. It was a theory that connected all the pieces: greed, betrayal, and power. For the first time, detectives saw the possibility that Omar's death wasn't driven by love or jealousy, but by calculated revenge, planned thousands of miles away. The breakthrough came when digital forensic experts recovered a deleted email from Sophie Lang's laptop. The message was short but chilling. Lure him somewhere private. You'll be compensated once it's done. It had been sent from an encrypted address that traced back to a corporate server in Dubai belonging to Nasser Holdings, the company owned by Faisal Nasser. The email was dated just 4 days before Sheikh Omar's disappearance. For detectives, this was the missing link that connected Sophie's actions to someone far more powerful and dangerous. Investigators now believed Faisal had orchestrated the entire setup. His motive was clear: financial revenge. By eliminating Omar, Faisal would regain control of several stalled real estate projects and prevent ongoing lawsuits from exposing illegal offshore accounts. Sophie, desperate for money and emotionally entangled with Omar, was the perfect bait. She had both access and trust. Ethan Cole, driven by jealousy and greed, became the muscle, likely believing he was protecting Sophie or getting a cut of the payoff. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they saw how everything fit too perfectly to be coincidence. Faisal had the resources to plan a transnational crime, and Sophie had unknowingly trapped herself in it. The precision of Omar's death, the surgical disposal, and the quiet cleanup all hinted at hired professionals, people paid to ensure there were no loose ends. Interpol began tracking Faisal's movements, but he left Dubai days before Omar's remains were identified. His private jet landed briefly in Istanbul and then disappeared from radar. By the time authorities issued a warrant, Faisal Nasser was gone, leaving behind an empire built on deceit and the haunting suspicion that justice might never reach him. The first arrest came swiftly. Ethan Cole was taken into custody at his apartment after police found blood traces in the trunk of his SUV. Inside, they also discovered tools, duct tape, and fragments of the same plastic material used to wrap Sheikh Omar's remains. When questioned, Ethan initially denied everything, but after hours of interrogation, he broke down and admitted to helping dispose of the body. His version of events painted a picture of chaos. According to him, Omar had collapsed during a heated argument with Sophie, and she had begged him to get rid of it before anyone found out. Ethan insisted he never meant to kill anyone, that he was only trying to protect her. Sophie was arrested soon after. Detectives confronted her with Ethan's confession, but she claimed he was lying to save himself. She maintained that Omar had left her apartment alive and that she had no knowledge of what happened afterward. However, forensic evidence continued to trap her: the blood in her bathroom, the missing bedsheet, and the large cash withdrawals made days before the murder. Meanwhile, investigators focused on Faisal Nasser, now officially considered a suspect in orchestrating the crime. But Faisal had already vanished from Dubai. His business offices were empty, his bank accounts drained, and his private jet untraceable. Interpol issued a red notice, and the FBI joined the hunt, believing Faisal might be hiding in Europe or Southeast Asia. The case now stretched across 3 continents. With 2 suspects in custody and 1 powerful man missing, authorities realized they were facing a web of deceit that blurred the line between personal betrayal and professional assassination. Yet despite their progress, the truth behind Sheikh Omar's death still remained maddeningly incomplete. The trial began in a packed Los Angeles courtroom under heavy media attention. The case of Sheikh Omar Al Rashid had drawn international outrage, and every detail of the scandal fascinated the public. Prosecutors portrayed Sophie Lang as a manipulative woman who lured a wealthy man into a deadly trap, while Ethan Cole was painted as the violent accomplice who carried out the cleanup. Sophie's defense argued she had been used by both Omar and Ethan, claiming she never intended for anyone to die. Ethan's lawyers, in turn, blamed Sophie entirely, insisting she masterminded everything and convinced him to help only after the fact. As the proceedings unfolded, shocking evidence emerged. The prosecution revealed an audio recording taken from Ethan's phone, in which Sophie's voice could be heard pleading, "You have to get rid of it before anyone finds out." The courtroom fell silent. Sophie's face went pale, and her lawyers struggled to explain the context. The recording changed the direction of the trial completely. Witnesses testified about the money transfers, the secret meetings, and the mysterious email from Dubai that linked the crime to Faisal Nasser. However, with Faisal still missing, prosecutors could not directly tie him to the murder. Without his testimony or physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene, the jury's focus returned to the 2 people standing in front of them. After months of arguments and delays, Ethan was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Sophie was found guilty of manslaughter and obstruction of justice, receiving a reduced sentence of 12 years. But even as the verdicts were read, many believed the real mastermind behind Sheikh Omar's death was still out there, untouched by the law. Years passed, but the shadow of Sheikh Omar Al Rashid's murder never faded. Ethan Cole remained behind bars, serving his sentence in a California state prison, where he rarely spoke to anyone and refused interviews. Sophie Lang, after serving 8 years of her 12-year sentence, was quietly released on parole. She disappeared from the public eye, avoiding cameras and settling somewhere under a new identity. Despite her silence, her name continued to circulate in online forums, documentaries, and podcasts that speculated endlessly about what truly happened the night Sheikh Omar died. Back in Dubai, Omar's family held annual memorials, but their grief was mixed with bitterness. They believed justice had not been served. To them, Sophie and Ethan were only pawns in a much larger game. The family's lawyers pushed international agencies to reopen the investigation into Faisal Nasser, but every trail went cold. He had vanished entirely, leaving behind nothing but abandoned offices and a string of frozen accounts. Rumors suggested he was living somewhere in South America under an assumed identity, protected by layers of false documents and offshore money. The Sacramento River, once a peaceful escape for tourists and locals, became an infamous landmark for true crime followers. Visitors often left white lilies on the bridge near where Omar's remains were found. Journalists and filmmakers continued to revisit the case, each offering new theories but never uncovering the missing pieces. Some believed Faisal ordered the killing to protect criminal secrets. Others thought Omar's death was tied to something deeper, an international conspiracy that went far beyond money or love. To this day, the mystery endures, a haunting reminder that even immense wealth and power cannot shield anyone from betrayal, greed, or the darkness hidden behind human desire.